Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for War of the Realms Issue 1. And I really enjoyed this. I think that this was a nice setup to the event, and I'm just glad that we're finally here. I've been reading Jason Aaron's run for years, and I've been always waiting to see the War of the Realms earnestly kicked off. And I know that he has done a lot of development storyline-wise for all the other realms before we finally gotten here to Midgard being the center stage for it. It's been so long, and I'm just glad that it's finally here. So, this issue kind of starts off just doing kind of like a recap of the realms and how they were born and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much setting this up as almost a Ragnarok endgame scenario for Thor, which I always like it when writers kind of get to this point because it's always interesting to see how they usually do their Ragnarok kind of play and how they kind of reset the god cycle. It's really kind of cool how that mythology lends itself to the comic book form of like, okay, you can get a lot of different writers doing a lot of different Thor stories, and then you can get someone that's like, okay, we'll do Ragnarok, but you can always work into it that it just begins the cycle anew again, because that's kind of how it usually works. So after getting that kind of recap of what's happened to the realms, we get to Asgard, and we see that Odin, of course, is not drinking, and he's just it's too quiet for him, and he's just kind of being ornery. And of course, we see that Malekith has sent his forces to assassinate Odin. And we don't see him completely die, but we see that after blasting a few of them, a good amount of the rest of the assassins get to him and continue to stab at him. We then get to Thor on Midgard, and it's being talked about how he's usually just been sending a hammer out into the void to try and see if it can get any news of what's going on in the other realms. Since they don't have the Bifrost, they don't have a reliable way to teleport everywhere. So it's like, yeah, of course. And then we see somebody slam into Thor's boat, and it's Loki. And of course he's like, oh god, he's starting his thing. He would have sent assassins to Odin, and then you and me, and then oh god, and then we see the Dark Elves try and go at him, and then Thor just unleash all these hammers to pretty much take him out, and pretty much going, Loki, take me to where Malekith is. I know you have access to the Black Bifrost. And of course he starts to do it, but Thor's like, Master, what are you doing? And of course Thor tells him to go get the Avengers, but it's like, what the hell? But we see that Loki has teleported him to Jotunheim, and that it's actually Malekith, and he's pretty much just taking Thor off the board and setting upon him a giant group of frost giants. And of course, Thor's trying to get to him, but he teleports out with the Bifrost. So it's like, shit, that ain't good. And then we get to Midgard with Spidey, and it's interesting to see Jason Aaron writing Spider-Man. I didn't think that I'd get this kind of cool stuff going on with Jason Aaron and having him actually bring Spidey this much into it, because Spider-Man gets a good amount of time in this issue. And I'm glad, because he's just swinging around going like, yeah, today's being a pretty great day. So when's it gonna hit? Spider-Sense hits, and he sees that Freya is fending off Dark Elves, and he goes down and is like, oh, okay, let's see what's going on here. And then one of the elves is like, we gotta kill him. And he's like, oh, thank you, waiting for that, because now I know who the bad guys are. And of course, Freya's like, oh, okay, you must be the man of spiders kind of thing. It's like, my son has told me a lot about you. He evidently was not exaggerating your colorfulness. He's like, oh yeah, let's see, swords, funny way of talking. You must be Thor's mom. Me and your son are BFFs. It's like, oh, so great. Of course, then the forces of like Sith and the rest of them pop out, and we get a little bit more information. And one of them is trying to get ready to be like, we've got to kill Spider-Man. This Dark Elf force is like, whoa, I like my eggs where they're at. It's just like, no, he's just like that. Just let him be. Now, of course, Jane pops up as well. We find out that Balder has had Dark Elves sent after him, as well as Jane. So Malekith is smart in how he's trying to play this out and how he's trying to take certain pieces off the board. It's like, that's pretty crazy. We then see that the Freya's like, yeah, the war's coming to Midgard, and we see the rest of the kind of reverberations. We see that Doctor Strange in the Sanctum Sanctorum, Crystal Ball goes kind of crazy, like, oh god, starts furiously casting spells and everything. Daredevil is even in the mix as well, being like, this is kind of strange. Wolverine's feeling the changes in his adamantium bones and all that. And then we also see the Punisher. It's crazy. He's like, get ready to kill this murderer, and then of course, all hell breaks loose. We see all of the forces, pretty much frost giants, trolls, fire goblins, flying everywhere. We see the forces of heaven as well, going after things in the sky, and just, it's crazy. And the artwork just lends itself to how beautifully epic this is. It's just amazing the amount of detail and how colorful and just crazy and impactful it is. It just lends itself to being a War of the Realms, and now that it's come to Midgard, seeing those kind of forces clash in New York, like we see the murderer guy being like, oh god, it's like Lord of the Rings. Of course, Punisher kills him, and then just throws himself out of Frost Giant, being like, I wish I had a bigger gun. And I'm like, I would have really just enjoyed a crazy ass Punisher arc where he got like sucked into this giant adventure in like the realms, and just to see how he would do it. It's just as great as putting him in the War Machine armor and seeing how that changes his effects, how he changes his battle processes and everything. So it's gonna be great to see him going up against these mythological beings, being like, screw that noise. I'm gonna take you guys out. And you're like, I don't give a shit. It's gonna And then, of course, we see that the Avengers have shown up. And this is just where it starts to get even greater. There's like some of my most favorite parts come into play here. And it's just like boom, 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 boom. And we see that Cap shows up, and Lady Freya calls him Captain of America and everything. And he calls her All Mother and all that. And just the rampart that they have between themselves of, yeah, the mutual respect that they have for each other is just fucking awesome. And it's comparable to being like, okay, you got your friend and you got your mom, and of course you're not in the play, but your friend gets along with your mom. It's like, okay, yeah, it's just cool to kind of see it like that. And they're trying to get into effect of what's going on. Cap gives her the lowdown that like, hey, Thor told us that someone like Loki took Thor somewhere, so we don't know where your son's at, but we've got to take care of what's going on here. And of course, we see some cool just action scenes. We see that Tony and Captain Marvel are going after the Heaven forces. Of course, Tony's kind of flirting with them, and they're like, take him to the breeding cells kind of shit. And like, oh god. We see that the trolls are smitten with She-Hulk, fighting over who's who for them. But then, of course, we get to the point where Malekith and his team makes their grand entrance, and it's pretty much just saying, hey, we're the new Lords of Midgard, surrender and everything. And my favorite moment is that as he's delivering this, Cap has thrown his shield at him, smacks him in the face, says, yeah, right, screw that noise, Avengers assemble, and we see like other people spouting off some lines as well, with Spidey being like, New York is for lovers. I'm like, God bless you, Spider-Man. Oh god. And then of course everything just keeps blasting off. We see Laufey pummeling into the ground pretty much, and just everything going crazy. He gets hold of Lady Freya, and he's getting ready to be his bad self, and we see, whoosh, his arm gets chopped off. Well, armish / hand. And we see that it's Loki, and I really like Loki's sword. Okay, now granted, I like anti-heroes and everything like that, and Loki's mostly been a villain, but this was a pretty great scene, and I always love it when they do kind of a Loki redemptive arc, and just seeing him kind of there, and with that awesome kind of sword, was just pretty sweet. And then, of course, she's like, yeah, well, before they get into talking, Malekith bum rushes him on a flying tiger. And just seeing them just kind of like bicker back and forth as they're fighting. And it's like, Malekith's like, we could have made such beautiful madness together, but of course you had to be you. And Loki's like, hey, if the gods are gonna end, it's gonna be because of me, bitch. And he's like pretty much ragging on him on this like pussycat. He's like, "This is a bog tiger, motherfucker." And it's like, before he can get even further, Doctor Strange pops up on the scene and I'm like, normally I'd let you guys mystically murder each other, but I'm gonna send you guys to another dimension now, pretty much. And then, before he can actually do that, they kind of get separated and Loki gets down and Fran's like, "Why should I trust you?" He's like, "Listen, I understand, but you should trust me because of this." And then Laufey picks him up and they're both hurling insults at each other. Loki being like, "My greatest sin was giving you a chance." He's like, "You are my greatest shame," and he eats Loki. Now, this is a pretty powerful scene because I'm like, I did not expect that, especially in that kind of way. But I'm like, Loki said why you should trust him because of this. I think he's got a plan. I don't know what that plan involves, being eaten by a frost giant, especially his father, but I'm damn intrigued to see how that one goes out. And of course, just seeing everybody's reaction where Ghost Rider's like, "Oh God, that was pretty gnarly. I think I want to throw up." And Spidey's like, "Okay, take that flaming vomit and aim it at the bad guys." And it was just great. I'm like, okay, yes, please. And everybody's pretty much getting off and doing what they're doing. Of course, Tony is reacting on the fact like, "Hey, last couple times we've had like 8 Thors, and now we need one, and where is he?" And of course, then we check back in on Thor in Jotunheim, and he is just wrecking ass. They're saying pretty much that you just keep sending them, I will be the doom of you all, pretty much. I'm like, and it's just so beautifully drawn and just shows Thor being at his like top form, being like, yeah, he's in a bad situation, but he's just going for it, man. All hammers and lightning and thunder and fury, and it's just like, yes, yes. So I really enjoyed this, and I hope that the art stays just as consistent because, I mean, this dude's been doing Thor and has been some of like my favorite parts anyway, so I know that it's going to be good, but just make sure you give him the time to do it and make sure it's a good schedule, and I'm just excited to see where this goes and where it's going to end now that we finally got this storyline that we've been waiting years for. It's just like, yeah, this was a good kickoff to it. Nice setup of the pieces, lay out kind of what's going on, and go from there. So those are my opinions on the issue. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.